At the end of every NFL season, a few head coaches get fired and a few assistant coaches take their place. Here's my list of 5 assistant coaches that'll become the next wave of head coaches. Greg Roman's the offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, and just that short description is good enough to explain why he's probably on most people's short list for any head coaching position at the end of this year. He got his start coaching for the Carolina Panthers back in the 90s, and after stops at the Texans, Ravens, and even a high school in New Jersey, he joined Jim Harbaugh's staff at Stanford. When Harbaugh left to coach the San Francisco 49ers, Roman followed him and became their new offensive coordinator. He helped lead the 49ers offense during their 2012 run to the Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick after Alex Smith was hurt. When Harbaugh ended his time with the 49ers and went to Michigan, Roman was then hired as the offensive coordinator for the Bills, where he coached yet another mobile quarterback in Tyrod Taylor. Since 2017, Roman has been with the Ravens, and he was promoted to the offensive coordinator position at the beginning of this season. Since taking over in that role, the Ravens have had one of the best offenses in the league. At the time of my recording this, they're second in the league in total yards per game and are averaging more than 200 yards per game rushing, which is good enough for first in rushing yards in the league. I'm definitely not the first person to talk about Greg Roman being a head coach next year, and it's easy to see why. With his quarterback putting up unbelievable numbers and the frontrunner for the MVP and his overall offense doing so well, do not be surprised if you hear at the end of the season that Greg Roman is the new head coach somewhere. Eric Bieniemy is going to be the next Andy Reid assistant to become a new head coach in the NFL. If you're old enough to remember 90s college football, then you definitely know Eric Bieniemy. He was the running back for Colorado that, during the 1990 season, he was the nation's second leading rusher with over 1,600 yards and finished third in the Heisman race. After his playing career was over, he went into coaching and eventually ended up at the Minnesota Vikings. While there, he used his experience as a running back to help coach Adrian Peterson to lead the NFC in rushing in the 2007 and 2008 seasons. After a few more stops, he ended up on Andy Reid's staff in Kansas City and eventually worked his way up to be the offensive coordinator. While he may not call the plays, Bieniemy is definitely a major reason why the Kansas City Chiefs have had one of the best offenses for the past 2 seasons. Mahomes had a record-setting year last year where he threw for over 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns under Bieniemy's leadership, while also breaking 12 NFL passing records. Mahomes has publicly supported Bieniemy becoming a head coach in the league, going so far as to say that he'd be an awesome head coach. Now, with his track record of coaching record-setting quarterbacks and record-setting running backs, do not be surprised if Bieniemy is the new Andy Reid offensive coordinator that becomes a head coach in the league. At the beginning of the season, Kevin Stefanski, the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, wasn't on this list. The reason for that is pretty simple. The offense just didn't look super great. Yes, Minnesota had one of the best run games in the league, but they could not get their passing game going. Through the first 4 games, it looked atrocious. Kirk Cousins, their quarterback, wasn't even averaging 200 passing yards per game. Now, the reason Stefanski is back on this list was because he was able to engineer a great turnaround. Ever since the 4th game of the season, the Vikings are averaging almost 300 passing yards per game, and it complements still an incredible rushing attack. At the time of me recording this video, Dalvin Cook, their running back, is second in the NFL with over 1,000 yards of total rushing, and the Vikings in whole rank 3rd in the league with over 140 rushing yards per game. Stefanski was originally elevated to the position of offensive coordinator after last year the Vikings actually fired their original OC. Ever since Stefanski took over that role, he changed the scheme to complement Kirk Cousins and what he can actually do, not what they want him to do. Now, after changing the scheme last year to really help them and take them much farther in the season they would have done, and after having to change it this year and work on the run, he's shown that he can make those adjustments. Yes, he can build a good offense. And no, he's not just going to stick with the same thing that he does game in, game out, even if it's not working. For all of these reasons, and for the simple fact that this past season he already interviewed for a couple head coaching positions, don't be surprised if Stefanski, which I'm pretty sure I butchered his name, may or may not be a new head coach in the league. Chris Richards best known for being the guy who turned a 5th-round cornerback who converted from a wide receiver, a 5th-round safety, an undrafted cornerback playing in the Canadian Football League, and a 1st-round safety into what was affectionately called the Legion of Boom. Richard finished up his playing career in the NFL in 2007 and returned to his alma mater, USC, to work under his former coach, Pete Carroll. He eventually ended up following Carroll to the Seahawks, where, as I mentioned before, he helped create the Legion of Boom. He was eventually promoted to the Seahawks defensive coordinator in 2015, and his defense ranked in the top 3 in points allowed in 2015 and 2016, but unfortunately, it fell to 13th in 2017 when Richard dealt with an injury-plagued defense. He parted ways with the Seahawks after that season, and he was hired by the Dallas Cowboys to be their defensive back coach and defensive passing game coordinator. In his first season with Dallas, the Cowboys finished 6th in the NFL in points allowed and 7th in yards allowed. He also went beyond some of these stats and was able to coach up Byron Jones, who was kind of an out-of-place secondary character, and with Richards' guidance, he was able to become a Pro Bowler. When I recorded this, Dallas ranks 7th in the league in passing defense. And just for a point of reference, the 3rd best passing defense in the league only gives up about 20 yards less per game than Dallas does. So the margins are so close. So when you consider his past experience as a defensive coordinator and his track record of turning late round picks into Pro Bowlers and even helping that defense win a Super Bowl ring, don't be surprised if next year you hear Richard's name be announced as one of the new NFL head coaches. Arguably the best name on this list is Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. The head coach of the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, is such a great offensive-minded head coach, but he is an offensive-minded head coach. The majority of the credit for this 49ers defense this season has to go to Saleh, who was hired in 2017 and built this team through several, to put it gently, not so great seasons. 2 years ago, they were one of the worst defenses in the league, and last year they were just middle of the road. Granted, everybody could see that, yes, they had a lot of great defensive pieces, but no one thought they'd put it together and just be this good. Through week 11 of the season, the 49ers ranked 1st in passing defense allowed per game. They're tied for 1st in the NFL in sacks, 4th in interceptions, and 1st in forced fumbles. All this adds up to being the 2nd rated overall defense in total yards allowed per game, with only 253 yards per game. As I said at the beginning of this video, all these great stats and performances are all because of Saleh's leadership and schemes. Because of just how good this defense has been, and with Nick Bosa potentially being not only the defensive rookie of the year, but the potential defensive MVP, look for Saleh's name to be thrown into almost every single conversation for new head coachings next year. Alright guys, that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, feel free to subscribe, as I'd love to know. If you didn't like it, let me know. Always trying to get better. Alright, thanks again guys. I'll see you next time.